All right, welcome to week 10 of your 2024 story. My name is Michelle, founder and owner of Movara Fitness Resort, and I am excited to be sharing with you today all about meal planning. Now, I'm not going to lie that this is a little bit of a humbling topic for me because I'm not great at it. And it's one of the things, it's one of my goals to be better. And in our email, we had put that meal planning is more than a tool for healthy eating. It's a reflection of self-care and mindfulness. So for me, it was a little bit of again, humbling experience to ask myself, okay, if it's a reflection of self-care, and because I'm not the best at meal planning, then is that just a reflection of, my self-care? And again, it's about mindfulness. It's about consciously breaking and creating our eating habits. So you think about the eating habits that you've had for years. Meal planning can help break that, and it can also help create new eating habits, which I'm a big fan of and know that the benefit of meal planning. So I'm not a big fan of usually fad diets or fad things that come and, there's a lot of different influencers and social media platforms that can be overwhelming and I'm not always necessarily in favor of. However, I always say, meal planning is never going to hurt. And I've also heard, meal planning, I have a lot of people who have been successful. When they meal plan, they're successful. So I want to address that concept and be in favor of meal planning, but give you maybe a different perspective of what meal planning can look like so that we can create new healthy eating habits. So our food choices are deeply influenced by our upbringing and habits. So the things that we ate as a kid or we did on a regular basis is definitely going to influence our meal planning and our habits. By consciously planning our meals, we can take control of these influences, transform our approach to nutrition and health. Meal planning helps break old habits like we talked about and create new ones. So I'm going to just go over 6 things that can help us with meal planning, and then I'm going to go through our journal prompt. But I want to first start with a different perspective on meal planning, because I also here at the resort guess the number one thing that I've heard over the years, over 20 years, I hear guests say, I'm an all or nothing person. So yes, I think meal planning can be amazing and fabulous. I think tracking can be amazing or fabulous. What we want to avoid is I'm either really good at it or I'm really bad at it. So my thought with the meal planning is the same. And I want to try and help us find a middle ground, because if you're like me, not the best at it, does that mean I don't do anything? No. Do I still do something? Yes. And I will tell you, it is a night and day difference for me. Even if I know 3 meals that are in my fridge, in my freezer, or that I have food for, that I just in my head know, the amount of stress that I can alleviate throughout the week is pretty crazy. I mean, it's like, oh, it's amazing to me as a mom. And so maybe, I know Cameron, my husband, doesn't stress about this at all. So for men, it may be a little bit different, but for a mom and maybe even just a female in general who, even without kids, or if your kids are grown up, or it's still maybe a stressful thing because you innately have that concern of caregiving, and men do as well. And I don't want to make this a gender thing, but depending on your personality, I guess I would say my husband's personality versus mine, my personality worries about it, even if it's not my kid. In fact, sometimes I know my kids aren't even going to be home and I will still stress, okay, what are we having for dinner? And I have the luxury of being able to have meals from the resort. So I know it can be a very stressful thing. So if we can take even just a few minutes. Now, ideally, we get really good at this. And I'm a big believer in the 10,000 hour rule of it takes time to get good at something. And I totally believe that at first, it's going to take a lot more time than hopefully eventually. I know, having researched and watched a lot of different things, I know the people who are really good at it, it didn't just happen overnight. I know they spent hours and hours and hours. So being patient with ourselves, and I'm speaking to myself, being patient, knowing that it's not going to be pretty, it's not going to be perfect, and it's not going to be fast. It's going to take some time. But again, taking a different approach to meal planning, because what we see it as, and this goes back to, my favorite quote that I share often, our expectations. Our expectation of what meal planning should look like. And I know oh man, it can be really overwhelming. There are a lot of beautiful, amazing, picture perfect examples on the internet of meal planning. I mean, it can be so satisfying to just watch. It's pretty impressive to see somebody put together a meal plan and it looks perfect. And I know that for me, and again, if you're like me, it can be overwhelming with the expectation of what it needs to look like, because I promise you, mine does not look like that. Mine, I'll grab a piece of paper, I'll grab a napkin, I'll put it on my phone oftentimes in notes, I'll send a text, but just somewhere, if I can put it down. Actually, I do a lot in my actual physical planner. I'll just write at the beginning of the week. And for me, if I even just have 3, maybe one day I'll get to the point where I have a meal plan of, I guess 3 to 5, because oftentimes we'll eat at home at least 5 times a week. And so it's nice to just have options. So in my planner, I'll write down 3 to 5 meals that are potential things that we could have. And it can be simple. And I know, again, for me, to avoid that all or nothing mentality of like, well, it needs to be clean, it needs to be balanced, it needs to have the right macros. And that can be literally paralyzing, to the point of like, again, that's where we go to the nothing. So I hope that we can approach meal planning, not because I don't have this secret formula of the macros, the balance, the portion, the different meals, and having, fish the right amount of time, anyway, it can be very complicated. And to me, that's what causes the all or nothing cycle. So if you struggle with that, if you don't, and you have, you've put in your 7, 8, 9,000 hours of meal planning, and you want maybe a little bit more specific, I'm probably not the right person to talk to. And there are resources out there. You put in meal planning on your internet, and you're going to get gobs and gobs of, people that, you can buy their meal plans. They have them for free online. And I think that's an amazing resource that we have, because there are people who are very inspiring that have mastered it. And I do believe it's worth taking the time. So for me, again, my approach is to have, again, I'll go over these 6 steps that, seem very basic, but, most meal planning things online are going to talk about, the steps of meal planning. But before I even go into that, I really wanted to stress and have us take a different approach of meal planning and get rid of the expectations to avoid the all or nothing of meal planning. So if you're not doing any meal planning now, and you've done it before really, really, really well, and you are frustrated because and you want to do it perfect. And so to get rid of that all or nothing cycle of, okay, well, what can it look like right now? And I'm going to suggest, by just starting with what works for you, it can be in your planner, on a napkin, it can be on a piece of paper, write down 3 to 5 meal options that you can have. Obviously, look at the ingredients that you have in your home, and the steps that we sent in our email. I really love, I think the first step would be to identify your dietary needs and preferences. So if you are feeding for a family, this is going to be a little bit more tricky, but the first step is the first step to a successful meal plan is understanding those needs and preferences. I always share that one of my check marks for what I want to consume is one, it has to taste good. So what things do you like? In fact, I now turn it over to my kids and I'm like, I'm not going to choose anymore. I want you guys to tell me what we're having because I'm tired of cooking things that nobody else wants. So I need to know what you like, and know people's preferences. So write down the things that you love. This includes any allergies, dietary restrictions, and then again, foods that you enjoy. So the second thing is decide on the number of meals. I mentioned 3 to 5, but it's going to depend on your work schedule. And you're going to want to include, breakfast, lunch, and dinners, any snacks that you might need throughout the day. You might go to work and take your meals with you. You may be at home for 1 or 2 or all of those meals. So decide on the number of meals. Then the next step, which is one that takes me forever, because I have gobs of beautiful books and the internet. I used to get on Pinterest a lot, and I still, those were really fun times. I was when my youngest 3 were really little, and I was able to be home with them a lot. And I would just be on Pinterest for hours and see these pretty pictures and find recipes that I wanted to try. And so you can spend a lot of time finding these recipes. Now, if you've been meal planning over the years, you probably have some of your own recipes that you know that you like that you can look through. So that's the third step. And again, there's lots of resources online. I love a good physical cookbook. And I also love reaching out to friends and family and ask what their favorite go-to recipes are. The fourth step would be to make a shopping list. And this doesn't have to be a certain way. It can be in your phone. I really love the Google Keep app. I share it with Cameron. And so if I put something on there, he has access from his phone to be able to see like, hey, can you run to the store and pick up a few things? He loves when I just have it right there on the Google Keep app. So that's a really great resource to use. But making a shopping list, once you've chosen your recipes, make a list of all the ingredients you'll need. I know for me, if I can just spend 3 minutes going through my fridge and my pantry, I can, have a little bit better of an idea of what is needed rather than guessing. The fifth step would be prepare some meals in advance. So this is, again, something that one day I hope to be better at. Right now, it doesn't happen much. I do tend to do some bulk cooking. So if I'm going to cook something, I would rather make a couple of them and put half of them or some of it in the freezer and have extras, leftovers that we can freeze and have. So I will do some bulk cooking, but I really do love the idea of taking your recipes and your meals and cooking things in advance. And then the sixth step on here is store your meals properly. This is one of the things, again, I would love to, and there's so many things online of different Tupperware containers, making sure you have the right things for storage. We had a guest this was years ago, and I have heard guests talk about this, but at the resort, we have this beautiful salad bar for lunch and dinner every meal. And she was like, if I just had this salad bar in my fridge, it would be amazing. So she did. She got containers and had replicated. She took pictures of what we had on our salad bar and replicated that so she could pull out her drawer and have the containers of the salad for the whole entire week, which is amazing. So you could meal prep that salad bar at the beginning of the week and have that. You could pre-prepare some of the meats and have those in advance so that if you are working and you're busy and you don't have time, you can have a lot of the stuff done in advance. You could cook even the rice in advance and have it ready for the whole week. We had one of our nutritionists for years did a meal planning class, and I loved the concept. She took a different approach to the meal planning and said, or she would choose a different meat each week and make a big batch of that. And then that batch would be tacos one day. It would be a salad one day. It would be, maybe a burrito one day or a quesadilla one day with those meats. She would use it differently throughout the week, which I thought was a really great. And I'll do oftentimes if I'm going to make and have a meat, you'll be able to use that for a couple different things throughout the week. Okay. So going on to the journal prompt for this week, I really loved the questions of how, or of asking ourselves these questions. Again, in our email, we talked about how meal planning can be a form of self-care, which I totally agree with. And we take the time, or at least I do, and we should, most of us try to take the time to be physically active and go exercise. And we know that's self-care. Well, taking an hour to sit down and meal prep or meal plan is absolutely, if not just important, maybe even more important than even the exercise, or just as important. So it really is a form of self-care, but it's also, again, an awareness process. So in our journal prompt, the first thing was to ask ourselves, how do my current eating habits reflect my lifestyle and values? So I heard years ago this concept of the gap, which some of you may have heard before, and it was a powerful, eye-opening experience for me. The presenter asked us to identify our core values, whether it be family, whether it be our faith, whether it be our health, friends, the things that are most important to us that we would do anything for. And then he asked us to make a list of the things that we do every day. And then he asked us, he said, if the things that we do every day are not in line with the things that we value most, there will be pain. There will be a gap. And I'm going to do a little visual for you because it's been in my head ever since I heard him explain it like this. But he would say, when the things that are most important to us and the things that we do every day, I'm going to rephrase it. When the things that we do every day are in line with the things that are most important with us, we will feel peace. When the things that we do every day are not in line, for example, I value my health, yet do I move? Do I meal prep? Do I meal plan? Do I put any effort into my health? If I'm not, I'm going to feel pain. When what we all want is peace and we all want to feel good, we will have that feeling of peace. We will feel good when those things that we do every day are in line with the things that are most important to us. So the first question in our journal prompt, we ask ourselves that, how do my current eating habits reflect my lifestyle and my values? You're the only person that gets to answer that. The second question is, what changes can I make through meal planning to better align my diet with my health and wellness goals? So now ask ourselves, okay, if they're not in line and they're way off, maybe if they're way off, there might be some small changes that we can make that with my meal planning, that can help us align those two things. The third question is, what foods do I find myself gravitating towards recently, and how do these foods make me feel physically and emotionally? So we also at the resort, we teach the Movara model, which we analyze our results, and then we trace those results back to basic needs. So the results that we have are a direct reflection of our beliefs, or our beliefs that are trying to fulfill basic needs. So we all have basic needs, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. We all have the basic need to live, to love, to feel important. We also have the basic need of variety. And so oftentimes we'll create these beliefs, we'll have these actions, and we'll have these results. Well, we can analyze and say, okay, why am I gravitating towards these maybe specific foods, maybe the specific time that I'm eating, and what need am I trying to fulfill that's not being met, that I'm feeling with maybe foods that I'm not necessarily in line with, or don't need or love, that aren't in line with my goals, but yet I'm still having those. What need am I trying to fulfill that's not being met? Again, this is a process that only you can really dive deep and get to the core of. So asking yourself what foods you're gravitating towards and why, and keep asking yourself that question, why? Well, I wonder why. Why? And that why will take you to the core motive. Okay, the fourth question on our journal prompt is: are there any foods that you have been avoiding and why? I had a comment or a guest send me a question and just said, hey, do you know any other protein? Because I've been having pea protein, but my friends tell me it's bad, so I'm not having that. I'm like, okay, well, if your body felt good on it and you like it and you're fulfilling your health needs, but your friends told you it's bad for you, it can be really hard when you ask anybody or you allow people to give their opinions and you take, well, people are going to give their opinions whether you allow it or not. It's how we let that affect us, because a lot of people are sharing their thoughts and their opinions because they're trying to justify their actions. And when we let that affect, how we feel, we have to really take that, let people say their opinions, and then be able to say, that's interesting, and then make your own choice for yourself. So if there are foods that you have been avoiding, now, if you have been avoiding them because they don't make you feel good or you have a reaction to them, yeah, absolutely. That's a legit reason of why, but maybe are there other foods that you've been avoiding? And again, asking yourself why. Again, these journal prompts are really just a time to reflect. And these are some questions that can help bring up some answers. The fifth question on our journal prompt is: have I noticed any patterns or habits in my eating behavior? It is absolutely normal and okay for our eating habits to be emotional. Now, let me clarify, because we want to avoid emotionally eating. But when we recognize, you know what, I was sad and I had whatever it might be ice cream, it might be pizza, it might be something that's not in line with your health values, but I was sad at the moment, I emotionally ate, and that's it. There's no shame in it at all. It is what it is. It's just we're emotionally eating. So many times we think of like, oh my gosh, I am emotionally eating, and that's a bad thing. Now, if we're emotionally eating all the time and too often, and we're not addressing those emotions in a healthy way and getting to, if there's an issue, we want to take care of the issue so that we're not continually emotionally eating, but to recognize that that's all that it is, and there may be a time when you're celebrating and you're eating because you're celebrating. So again, that fifth question is just to notice any patterns, and maybe those patterns have been maybe a little bit more often than we want them to be. And, asking yourself why and what foods you're kind of gravitating towards. Awareness can allow us to change. So that's all these are. So the last question is: what changes would I like to see with my food choices? And how can I make these changes sustainable in the long run? I can't emphasize that word enough. How can I make these changes sustainable? We want to ask ourselves. In fact, in college, I had a professor who literally said, if it's not something that you can do the rest of your life, run. Now, that might be a little bit extreme, because I do think that, seasonally and also how our body is reacting, things can change, and they should change. And that's okay. But I think his point really was, I'll just give you an example, because if we take this meal prepping and we follow a plan that's extremely strict, and it's like, I'm going to know exactly my macros, exactly, what I'm eating all week long, we might be able to do that for a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3. Is that sustainable forever? So, and is it bad to do it and then not be able to do it? No, it's just being able to adapt. So, I might be able to do it 1 week. The next week I'm really busy. So instead of not doing anything, I want to do a different version of that. So maybe 2 days, I know exactly what I'm going to be having. Or maybe again, you go to where my method is right now. And for me right now, it makes a night and day difference if I can just know, you know what, I've got these, I can look at my planner. We've got, I'm going to do homemade pizza on Friday. We've got stuff for chicken enchiladas. I've got something in the fridge that my kids can heat up. You know, if that just takes a lot of stress away from me. If I know if I'm not home or there is something for my kids to grab. Now, I'm not going to lie. I would love for it to be better. And I know that I can continue working at it, and maybe one day it'll be a lot better and maybe it won't. And I'm just going to do the best that I can. And I don't know. I want to be careful that I'm not justifying my actions, but I also want to avoid the shame and feeling worse about it, because I can be mad at myself. I can be upset and I definitely will tend to do that sometimes. And some days it's easier than others, but I know that doesn't help. And I know that just doing what I can is enough, and trying a meal plan that you can get behind, that you feel good about. In our email, our graphic design gal put these together, and I printed out 4 of them for myself. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do our meal prepping. And, you know, this has 7 days. I might put in here 3 or 5 days. And it's deciding on your meals. I actually I bought another cookbook a few weeks ago, and I handed it to my daughter, and I said, I want you to make a list, go through these. They have beautiful pictures. Tell me what you think looks good. I'm going to take those. I'm going to go through my kitchen, make my shopping list. I do love that Cameron likes to go to the grocery store, and doing the Google Keep can work. I know a lot of people, and I think this is amazing. I think the resources that we have today are quite amazing. You can do online shopping. Maybe many of you do, and I haven't been quite organized enough to do that. I think it's awesome. And just spending 5 or 10 minutes of putting it online. I know a lot of my friends, they just do their weekly order, and it's amazing. It's so really, really great. So even taking 5 or 10 minutes of setting that up. For me, it's convenient. I have my online ordering with basically my husband. I can just text him and say, hey, will you pick these things up? And he's really great about it. So he's my grocery store online shopper. And then on here, the 4-step the third is creating a shopping list, and then your meal prep time. So if there's any of these things that can be prepped before, you can schedule that in there. And everybody's different. Some people are really good planners, schedulers. They thrive on stuff like this, and that's amazing. That's a gift. It's a really amazing gift that, you can take advantage of, and you can help others. Probably many of you do in your caregiving, those who need help helping them plan. If you're like me and you don't, and it's not a gift that you have, there are other ways, and it's okay to adapt and adjust and make it yours, make it your own. So I love this whole month. Last week we talked about nutritional basics. This week we will be sharing some different meal planning, having the journal prompt, and next week we will be talking about transforming your relationship with food. And man, this might be one of the most important topics. And I am not an expert. I have had years of experience and have worked with thousands of individuals and experts that do deal and address with this. I do know the power of this. This is huge. I know that the relationship with food over the years within our industry is tough. Life is overwhelming as it is, let alone taking care of ourselves and trying to worry about our food. And we've got marketing galore when it comes to food. It's a lot. It's a lot that we are exposed to. And so it's a tough and extremely important topic that I'm excited to talk about. We're going to talk about embracing mindful eating. And again, not the expert, and absolutely struggle with this myself. Have had years of experience, again, working with others, and also working with a lot of experts on this, have seen the effect that it has on individuals. And I know that this is a really big barrier to seeing results because of years and years of struggling. So I'm excited to talk about it next week. Again, transforming your relationship with food and embracing mindful eating will be week 11. And this week, hey, I'm pretty proud of myself for printing these out. And I printed 4. I may print more. We'll see how this goes. I usually use my planner. But I think engaging my kids, and I've got, Jada, my youngest, who has got time still. My boys are pretty much non-existent when it comes to being able to rely on them. They're super busy. And Macy actually works a lot of the evenings, but she's also a really great help. So instilling some of your kids and having them help, I know, is a really powerful way for them. My kids did not get my oldest kids became interested in meal planning and meal prepping and cooking when they were actually involved with it at the resort, which was awesome. So, and Macy's getting more and more interested, which is really fun. So it happens when they're exposed around it, when they are given the opportunity. I have a friend who pays her daughter to do it for her, and that's a really great thing that they can do. So this week, I hope that you can find some ways to do meal prepping, so meal planning and prepping, and know that it is a form of self-care. It's not just a fad diet. It's not just a fad thing but we do want to avoid the all or nothing mentality when it comes to it. So doesn't have to look a certain way. Make it your own way and you'll be successful. And that's it. So good luck with that this week. And we will see you next week for chapter 11.